Hi, I'm Dan Kuecker. Thank you for entering the arena. In this episode, we talk all things education. Where we are, where we're going, what's going well, and where we can improve. What's the true purpose and the proper role of schools in the year 2025? Has our education model gone stale? Is it outdated? For our students, how can they best use AI and other technology to advance their development? And how, for the rest of us, how can we step up and do a better job of serving our youth? I'm hopeful and I'm excited about America, and I hope you are too. I thank you for listening. I thank you for engaging. I thank you for sharing.
Dan, you've seen education as a student, parent, school leader, and Army officer. What's your big picture take on the state of education today?
It's very positive. I'm excited about our future. I'm excited about America's future, and for a number of reasons. One, because I'm just hopeful for our generation of young people, that Generation Z and Gen Alpha coming behind them. They're courageous. I think they're hungry for information and knowledge, and it's for a number of reasons we can get into, but I think there's a hunger there that I'm excited about, and I think they're excited about it. I also think there's plenty of people who want to serve, certainly within our education systems, our teachers, our educators, administrators, everybody around that. I think there's a great desire to serve there. And then there's a greater community that wants to support our schools. I think America generally wants to have a future of talented adults that are paying taxes and finding success in this world. And one way to do that is with money, too. I mean, America's a wealthy nation, and we have resources, and we have a commitment to invest in our schools and our young people. Now, there's, of course, the challenges are the details of all of that, but I'm generally excited about that. So that's on the pro side. I feel good about it. Certainly there's challenges, and I like to see opportunities when I see issues, and I think there are opportunities behind each one of these, and so I certainly welcome the conversation here and a continued conversation with people that I have had and that I want to continue to have, because when I retired from the military, one of my purposes for the next phase of my life was in this education field, was to help turn girls and boys into women and men, and not only selfishly, when I get older, I want a nation, I want young people to take care of me, but I really care deeply for the world we're leaving, my kids, our kids, and our grandkids. So.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think that the important thing is that the times are changing. And so when you take a step back, like, you have to think about what the purpose of education is. And I think I'd be curious to hear your take on what is the purpose of education.
Yeah, I think it's a number of things that a lot of people can have varied opinions on, but it kind of comes to the same general theme that we want our kids to be prepared for their future. We want them to be set up for success. And that comes in a lot of different ways. There's going to be issues that they need to navigate, and so we want strong character. We want to help develop character and formation in our kids. Certainly we want to have academic rigor and some of the soft skills that come with sports and arts and everything else within an education system, and just within a family setting and all other things that folks do. So I think there's a purpose there beyond going to college, although that's part of it. We need professionals and doctors and engineers and lawyers, and there's a traditional track there through colleges. But I think there's opportunities to rethink college as well, and we rethink what success is when kids become adults, and whether there's other things that our society can embrace and maybe not kind of unintentionally frown upon if someone chooses to go a route other than college. Mm-hmm. I think it's a new world that we need to be agile for. So I'm excited about the opportunity there, and we can talk more about technology and and some of the other innovative options that are out there for families and for kids to try to find that success, or just their niche, what's giving them excitement with education. So I think that's another piece. You say, what do we want with education? We want kids to enjoy learning. We want kids, so that enjoyment, if we're not capturing joy in their daily lives, well, we need to kind of look in the mirror as a system too.
Yeah, and you talked about character being one of the central kind of pillars of education. And I think that I totally agree. But I think that one of the biggest things is just preparing young men and women to be valuable contributing members to society. And that requires you to think about like, what are the needs society has, and make sure that what we are teaching in education aligns with what society needs. And you talked about the state of education today. And I think one of the biggest issues that I see is just like a misalignment of the education system that we have and kind of modern workforce. I was listening to the All In Pod, which I really enjoy listening to, and they talked about the last couple of generations have been told almost like this lie of what society needs. And it wasn't necessarily like a purposeful lie. It was more of a just incorrect assumption of where you kind of think we need more white collar workers and because the blue collar workers are going to be replaced by technology. And I'd be curious to kind of hear your take on how education has misaligned in general with the modern workforce.
Yeah, good question. There's a lot to chew on there, and I'm glad you're listening to the All In podcast and some of the others, good thought leaders that are out there that are really wrestling, chewing with these important issues of the day. I think it's fair to say that our education model is a bit stale. It's outdated. It's the structure itself was created, 100 plus years ago. Why do we have a calendar that's 9 months school, 3 months off? Is there a purpose that benefits our students today with that? Many people say, oh, it's the agriculture economy. Well, when you really peel that onion back, it's not. Most kids that maybe would work on the farm, planting season and harvest season is not in the summer. So there are reasons for that. The 9 to 3 schedule or the 8 to 3 schedule, going into a classroom and doing lectures with 20, 25, 30 kids every day. Is that the right model for learning? So I think there's a piece there. I think the educators themselves, is the model correct with go to college, get an education degree, and you go in and become a teacher and you do that for 40 years. Is that the best model for today? We need some of that, but there's other non-traditional educators that could come into the classroom with other types of experiences. And maybe with some teachers, they could do that for 10, 15 years and maybe do something else. So that strict, rigid model for teaching maybe is stale too. And then with the purpose that you talked about there, I think, yes, what do we need? We need people who can think critically and be civic-oriented and have strong character and be able to have families and raise kids and pay taxes. All of that's true, but we also need to develop practical skills that the workforce needs. And do we really need to go to college for 4 years to develop those skills? And I've talked to a lot of folks that, you compare somebody that goes to a 4-year degree and somebody that goes to the military or has some other type of experience out of high school. And then as an employer, when they're 22 or 23, I look at their applications, resumes, and I'm not sure that the college-educated applicant is better than the non-college educated applicant, because education is certainly well beyond formal in the walls of a school. Education comes from every day of how hungry are you to learn and talk to mentors and read and listen to podcasts and do things like that. You can go to college and then just be boring life and you just drink and watch sports and do nothing else. You're not necessarily educated, even though you got a BA in something. Yeah. The other person can go spend time in the library and be hungry for a lifelong of learning. Well, that person's going to be more educated. Yeah. And so there are practical everyday things that people need to know, and a lot of people have talked about that, and we can some as well. But just finances and handiwork around the house is certainly important, but there's other dynamics too of how to utilize technology better and AI and some of those that are going to springboard a lot of jobs in the future where you don't need to. Information is right there. So it's what do you do with that information to find success? And that sometimes schools even can be the opposite of kind of degrade someone's ability to do that with some of the staleness of the programming. Kids that want to swim upstream and find success in the marketplace maybe aren't aligned well with somebody who's going to get A's in the classroom.
Yeah, expand on that a little bit. What do you mean when they like hinder those people that kind of don't align?
Well, even with law school, there was an old joke that A students in law school become law professors, and B students become judges, and C students become successful lawyers, because it's that academic environment. Those who do that do succeed in that academic environment enjoy it, and that's what they do. And so they sometimes become college professors or do something that's a little more academic. But that's not necessarily aligned to what the workforce needs. Success in the classroom. What are you teaching? And depending on the teacher and how you do, and how a teacher looks at that education model. But sometimes it's just repetition, it's memorization, it's just putting the information back to what the teacher wants, as opposed to challenging what the premises are to a lesson. That challenging the system is what breeds success in the workforce. Challenging dynamics in a high school these days is not going to get you very far. I know you'd obviously have to do it in a professional way. You don't want to be a distraction, but sometimes that and even in the college, we talk a little bit about rethinking college too at the high school level. We need to embrace the free exchange of ideas, and it comes in a political context a lot of times, but it's not just that. We need students to really challenge the assumptions of this world, whether it's debt, as a nation or as individuals, is it healthy? We need to have that. And I know I've talked to a lot of young people who, when they really look into this, they start scratching their heads, who's going to pay for our national debt one day? And all these people with credit cards and these credit card companies pushing debt, student loans is a big thing. Kids go into college and come out.
So, I mean, if you take a step back, and like just knowing some of even my friends, I've heard people say before they even have a single kid that they need to start saving for their kids' college education. They haven't even started a family and they got to save for that. I think that's kind of problematic. So do you think college is still worth the cost? I mean, the college tuitions have been skyrocketing. What should families consider when weighing the value of a degree?
Yeah, I guess a couple of thoughts. One, just for financial dollars, it's an individual decision, but you really need to look at the output. What is it you're investing in? It's got to be something more detailed than just college. But if you're going to have something on the back end that's going to be able to be better than something else that you're doing now, because it's not just the investment in tuition and books and board that you have during that 4 and sometimes, unfortunately, 5 or 6 years of undergrad, but it's also the opportunity cost. You're not in the workforce making money, so you're losing there. You're not getting valuable experience in the workforce from bosses and mentors and colleagues and making mistakes and overcoming them. That's where learning happens. So there is a cost there. And the days of you have to go to college to be successful, I think it's stale, and it needs to be put in our rearview mirror. But certainly college is valuable for many, but you have to know what you're doing and have a plan for that. But the other piece for cost that a lot of people don't talk about, that you tapped on a little bit about, even with the parenthood thing, I got to start saving money for my kids right away, is we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. Our high-achieving students in high school and in college are stressed out. You talk to the student health docs at some of our universities, and I was shocked how many students are on anti-anxiety medication, anti-depression medication, are regularly seeing therapists about issues that they're having to deal with, and that's a struggle too. And so if we're putting pressure, and if the college track is putting so much pressure on individuals, that's not healthy either. And that comes into another piece that I think we need to stress and promote in our schools, all the way down to the middle school level and in the elementary too, is physical health and mental health. Because what we need more than anything are healthy, successful adults in the program of what they know. That can all be trained. We need to have people in the workforce that have healthy lifestyles, can be good fits in an organization. They're trainable, they're coachable, Just like on a sports team, you know, the kids that succeed are coachable. They listen, they learn. They're a lifelong dynamic of learning. And that's what we need in the workforce, more than just stuffing people full of information.
Yeah. It was interesting. I told Peter about this earlier. In college, I had to write a paper in economics. It was like essentially talking about how we have such a weird dynamic going on. Historically, what made people successful was having a ton of information, being able to recall on information and provide information, because having information was scarce. Information was scarce, and it was important for us to be able to recite or repeat the relevant information. Now, because of technology, and information is so readily available that it's more important to be able to filter through the information rather than like pull up that information or find that information. So when you look at it every time, it was like the invention of writing, the printing press, and then you see technology with like internet and AI. It's just exponentially growing, and so it's interesting to see how what traditionally the education system was built off of was to be able to recite and pull from that information. Now it's got to completely change the way that we interact with it. What do you think of that?
Yeah, you're spot on. I guess two conversations I recently had, one with a fellow lawyer and one with my son. I guess my son first. We were talking about history classes or series of history classes he's had and all the work that went in, and listened to his teacher and the knowledge that happened, and it was fine. He learned a lot. But he compared that to 1 hour or just a couple of 1 hour sessions with AI and with technology, and all the information that came at him, and gave him some more dynamics, and he could have a back and forth with an AI about, you know, challenging. Well, you said this about Western Europe in 1940, but what about this in 1920? In that, and he said, "Wow, I learned so much more with just a couple hours of AI than I did in a whole semester of school." And the same thing with lawyers. I was talking to this law student. You know, we do 3 years of law school, stuffing a bunch of information in there. But a lot of people say, I don't need lawyers to know all this about the law. They need to understand how to apply the law to different fact patterns. And that takes a human brain to think about things, or maybe some support from some technology to spot some issues. But you need a human to support with that. But you don't need to be an encyclopedia full of a legal treatise anymore. And that's the same thing with med school. You're going to have AI with medicine. We're going to have AI everywhere with pharmacists. All of that's there. So I think even more so the model, maybe college needs to change where you don't need to do 4 years.
Yeah.
Maybe college is 2 years.
What would a modern higher education look like? How can we better connect college to these real world skills, like you talked about, even just like in this lawyer situation?
Yeah, you take a step back for a sec. When you talk to many people who are my age, and or even a decade or above or below, what do they remember? What was the value of college? We're not saying it was that statistics class I took my junior year. It wasn't the content from that biochem class I took freshman year, and half the kids got D's or F's because the professor was making a point. Well, there was some value there about overcoming adversity and about, you know, challenging yourself and making sure you can understand the rigors of med school if you want to go down that route. So there was some, but the substance, it really wasn't there. But the value for a lot of us was the friendships made, the networks that we developed over the relationships over the extended amount of time, the soft skills of adulthood that you're kind of developing, being on your own for the first time. I think there's a dynamic where I think college is very important for that maturation process, that development process of kind of, okay, I'm outside the rooftops of my parents and I'm with others with a little bit of oversight in a college setting. I think some of that is good and the learning's happening, but do you need 4 years? Maybe not. Can you do that in other settings that are far less expensive? Can you get some of that in corporate America with some training? Can you get that in the military with some training? Yes. Like, there's a lot of people that go to basic training, or they go to an academy setting, or they do other things that's propelling them directly to the workforce. That's something to think about. Airlines right now are looking to train their own pilots, and not looking for outside sources. Air traffic controllers, we need pilots and air traffic controllers. How are we creating a system that's going to push those folks out? And I think our colleges, they're really going to have to get in front of some of this, or there's just not going to be a demand for many of them. Not all of them, but many of them. Why go to college and make that investment when there's not the ROI that's going to propel to a degree, and it's just going to be saddled with debt?
Yeah, no, the debts are insane right now for people coming out of college. And I just thought, something that came to mind was, we talk about just the education system as a whole, what's good, what's bad. And you talked about your son engaging with AI and learning so much more than he did in a whole semester. But I think part of that's just like the teacher. And I think that it's not just the education system as a whole, but what are the individual teachers? So when you ask that question, what makes a great teacher, and should we change the way that like individual teachers even teach?
Yeah, good question. And treatises have been written on this, and it's a hard one to wrestle with. But I guess the first part is the teacher there because they are wanting to partner and invest with that student with where they are at that time and develop them forward for what's in the best interests of that student? Or is the mindset the teacher knows best, the teacher knows what's maybe arguably worked for the last 10, 15, 20 years, and it's some of the same curriculum, and they are just pushing the information out and then grading papers and going through the motions without saying, just like, who are the best coaches or who are the best mentors out there? We need our teachers to be coaches. And that's one of the same, where it's kind of the soft coach, where I'm trying to coach you to success in this classroom. We need to find mentors, true mentors in our schools, or at least in our children's lives, that are going to help them with their walk as they navigate all the issues that are happening inside or outside the classroom. And that's where we talked before. It's maybe not the model that the kids that go to college at 18 and want to be teachers, and they do 4 years, get an education degree, do some student teaching, and go in. That maybe shouldn't be the only model. It is a model, and we don't need to get rid of it, but that shouldn't be the only model. Military veterans, wealth of experience, can come into the classroom and command some respect because they've done some cool things and wonderful things, and they've seen the world, and they've led people and certainly done hard tasks. Do we need to have a hard, difficult certification process to bring that person in? Business leaders, somebody who's run a small business for a while or done something else for a bit, and they want to make a transition. Hey, I want to go in the classroom for 5 or 10 years. I've been a successful mentor. Let's let the people that want to teach go in there, and for the right reasons. And so, no, I think we've all had bad teachers, and we've all had good teachers, and we kind of know what worked for us and didn't work for us. The other piece is we saw it in the military a lot, is counseling, mentoring of, leading leaders or teaching teachers. What is that apparatus like to help teachers improve their craft, and doing it in a way that is dynamic and helpful, not just for the teacher, but for that student? And then if I could, there's another piece to all this. The best teachers are partnering with the parents well, and there's not this artificial wall placed in there between an educator and a parent. And we can talk more about that, again, talk about treatises. A lot has been written and discussed there, but the best teacher is embracing that partner role. And it's not my role to supplant the role of a parent, which you do see in some schools right now, even with some real substantive issues like transgender or other things that where a teacher is going to take that role on. No, your role is to partner with our society, with our parents, and kind of be with our society itself to ensure, like we said before, the why is the student, and the how is to make them, develop them further. So that I think thinking of teachers as mentors and coaches in addition to just programmatic teachers is important.
Yeah. So we've talked about who's teaching these students and how that impacts the personalization. I kind of want to move on to technology, and that ties back also to your son. How do we embrace technology in the classroom or in education, in our education system, without making it a crutch?
Yeah, that's a tough one, and a lot of schools are starting to experiment more and more with things. I think we know that too much technology is not a good thing, especially at a young age. I think we know it challenges kids with their ability to focus, their willingness and ability to engage with other humans is challenged with having too much. I even see it with my children. If I even just 20 or 30 minutes on an iPad or my child's watching something, I take them off of that, and there's a bit of a detox period. And lo and behold, that there's 2 hours of him watching something. There's a significant detox period. So we know that is the case. We need human engagement, and too much technology comes away from that. Even with dating, I think there's a dynamic where if it's too much online, it hinders the ability to develop real relationships. On the other hand, there's an infinite level of opportunity here with AI that we need to embrace, and we need to have people in our schools and our educators that know and understand it, not people that are resistant to this change, because they're just not going to connect with the students who are living online. They're going to have it. They're going to be there. We can't prevent it. So how do we use that in a way that's ethical, and that it's healthy and put guardrails in there, in their lives, and how to do it. But they need to realize how to use AI for a paper in a way that's ethical and healthy. Some of the writing, maybe if you're going to learn things, is that it's in classroom. The days of go home and write your paper and bring it in, unless it's done with the acceptance that there's going to be an AI role, it's maybe not going to be that helpful, because a lot of students are going to be tempted. And why not do that? I just saw a law firm out there was saying, hey, for our emails right now, I don't want you to spend 30 minutes crafting the perfect email. Put your prompts into some sort of legal focused AI and tell it what you want and kick it out, and you're going to save a lot of time. And it's the same thing that a lot of folks that are now wrestling with it. So we need to teach our kids how to prompt AI, how to write email, how to be respectful in those situations. So I think that learning has to happen, but it needs to be acceptance of the reality of technology. We need to have people in the classroom teaching that have the aptitude for it, and the desire with it, and the capacity to teach it, but we can't lose the human dynamic. And to that piece, you're starting to see a trend. More and more schools are going back to no phones in the classroom.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really good trend. The school our kids go to started that last year. Another school, I was talking to a school psychologist for another school around here. They did it the year before, and this school psychologist said it was night and day, the difference. You could see it in the first couple of weeks of the challenges the year before and that year. And then one just story, I was talking to an educator who had a really strong relationship with a student, an open relationship, and the student came up to this educator and said, hey, this new policy of no phones, I'm grateful for it, because I was so addicted, and it's helping me come off it. There were times where I would ask to go to the bathroom in the classroom so I could just go check my social media in the bathroom. And I didn't really have to go to the bathroom, and that was the crutch. So I think there's certainly a parent dynamic here too. This burden can't all fall on the school system. So back to that partnership, parents need to step up and make sure that the phones are not in the bedrooms past a certain hour. And, all those guardrails are out there. Using technology also to say only so much time on Snapchat or on social media or whatever they're doing. So I think technology can also help us navigate technology with putting those guardrails on there and what's smart and what's not. But I think we need to, it's here.
Yeah.
We need to embrace it, and the learning can happen so much quicker. And so there's some families, especially in the home, where the innovation's truly happening right now is some private school, some public school, a little bit with some partnerships with the tech colleges. Some of that's happening. But in the homeschool curriculum and schedule, you're just getting data back immediately on how people are doing different things. And so I think there's another piece right there about partnering and not being rivals. It's not just educators and parents, that dynamic. It's public schools, private schools, and homeschooling. We all have the same mission. Yeah. It's not a competition, or we're not enemies, we're not rivals. We need to accept and learn from each other because there is a place in our education structure for all three of them, and they're not going anywhere.
Yeah, I think one other kind of component that could be interesting to add in there is charter schools.
Yes.
My dad started a bunch of charter schools, and I think that gives you the freedom and choice when it comes to curriculum. And you talked about how schools need to integrate AI ethically and just period, they need to integrate it. With regard to school curriculums, you started to touch on the curriculums that that schools need to integrate. What's working when it comes to curriculums, whether it be homeschool, private school, public school, charter school, and where are the areas that it needs to be improved?
Yeah, I guess a couple thoughts. One, with regard to the practical aspect that we talked about, all kids do not need to do the academic college prep track. Some of that learning is not needed. The calculus, the advanced algebra, not everybody needs to do that. So I think there needs to be some more individualized attention for the students, and maybe it's at the high school level that you look at what is it that you want. And some schools are starting to embrace that more and more, but I think it's the individualized attention and not the group piece. Because there's a dynamic here where we look at education as year groups, and we're pushing them along, and we're putting students in the same classroom that are at different readiness levels, they're at different aptitudes, their focus is very different, whether they're taking school very seriously or whether they're going to be part of the distraction out there. And we're putting them in the same classroom because they're the same age. So maybe there's a stale model there as well, where we can play around with cohorts and be creative and innovative in that dynamic. But no, with curriculum, you got to know what's bringing joy to learning. And if kids want to, especially the ones that are the small percentage that are distractors, you need to have. And again, we have some of this, but we need to even put more support investment into the right people who can connect with those folks, those kids, and try to get them on the right trajectory and not being a distraction to everybody else in the classroom. So I certainly would support a lot of that. But part of it is you got to find what brings joy in what they like doing. And it might be embracing playing basketball. It might be embracing during the school day and teaching things on the basketball court. It might be embracing video games even for some of these things. It's not just the antithesis. What is it that can to get them on the right trajectory? Because what we've done, and COVID it was a problem, but also revealed a problem where our school systems are just pushing people along. And COVID revealed that because we all know that not a lot of great learning was happening during that 1 or 2 year period. And what did we do? We just pushed everybody along and accepted it. And that's kind of been happening pre-COVID too. And people would just be pushed along, and then kind of a fake graduation, and they graduate, but they're not prepared to have success in the world. They're going to be dependent on society to take care of them, or our companies to train them. And it was just kind of a lost time period. That's not all burdens, not all on the school systems. Parents and others need to jump into that as well. But the school systems need to be open to that innovation and the support from others, and knowing that we haven't done everything perfectly in the last 20 years, and we are a little stale, both at the college level and the high school level.
Yeah.
Our models need innovation.
Yeah. You mentioned that behavioral issues come when there's a lack of personalization, and so you need that partnership with the home, because I think a lot of those issues come from the homes in whatever play. When there's chaos in one area of life, there's a chaos, and you see it kind of ripple into other areas. So you have schools need to have practical skills. They need to be partnered. We've talked about personalization, and kind of moving on to the next component of school is we've talked about the mental part when it comes to education. What about when it comes to mental and physical health? How can schools support the mental and physical health without becoming mental health clinics?
Yeah, good question, and they never will be. College levels, you got student docs and things that can. They're not a mental health clinic, but they are providing some support. High schools do have some of that infrastructure there in some of our bigger public schools and others. And even for the educators themselves need some of this, what we're finding. And even all the way to the elementary level, that some of that therapy and support is needed. I think the first piece is truly being aware of the problem, partnering with our community leaders, our government, our societal leaders to say, hey, there's a deeper problem here that we need to stop ideologically right versus left, just beating each other up. We need to find solutions. It's like, the same dynamic with the military. The military is forced to train, fight, and win our wars with the young people that America creates, develops, and then recruits into the military. It's the same thing with educators, but we're not choosing. The workforce comes. The military has to accept it. Our educators, they take the students that are there. They're forced to come. So there is a partnership that for some of those root problems of why kids are struggling and with behavior issues or other dynamics, there's reasons behind all of them. And the solution isn't just the schools. So there's other things that we need to partner with and work on that. What can the schools do? I mean, they're doing their best, but we need to it's less about programs and it's more about the right people, I think. And so the more schools can identify the right people who can be the good fit to reach these students on both ends of the spectrum, those that are focused in needing mentorship can navigate the challenges, the real challenges that they have, and at the other end, the folks that are not achieving in the classroom, that are struggling with a lot of different ways, who are the right people to have in there to work with them? And if that's not aligned, and sometimes it's just fresh faces. I remember I did a little substitute student teaching when I left the military, and not student teaching, substitute teaching in the Minneapolis school district when I left the military and I was preparing to go to law school. And one of the dynamics I noticed is just being a male, when I go into elementary schools, I was the only dude. I was literally the only guy in some of these schools. And to see young boys look up and look at me a little bit different, not only because I was a fresh face, but I think I was a male face talking to this first grader or this third grader. And you get the sense, you talk to some of the other teachers female teachers are doing yeoman's wonderful work. So it wasn't, the dynamic at play wasn't the teachers there weren't working, but those kids didn't have a positive male model in their home either. They didn't have a positive male model in a lot of different places. And I was at one school for just 3 days, and I remember the one relationship I had with this kid, and loved it. And he was, by the end of the third day, he was actually talking in class. And some of the other students who had told me, no, Charlie here, he's a screw off and he doesn't really pay attention. He doesn't show up. They were even came to me and said, I'm surprised that Charlie was doing well. So again, it's not to put any focus on me, but if you can get in the classroom the right people to connect, you can just see it in their eyes. Yeah. Sometimes, and you can see it too. Sometimes you see the excitement about life in a first, second, third grader's eyes, and you go to classrooms and you see fifth, sixth, seventh graders. Sometimes that shine, that excitement in the eyes, the dancing of the eyes is just gone. It's kind of, you can just see somebody, it's kind of that person has lost some hope in this world, and that's what you don't want to have. That's kind of too late. We need to get ahead of these kids and give them hope, give them excitement about learning and about life. Mm-hmm. And then I think the latter years of teaching is better.
Yeah. I think another area that really people or students really enjoy, and that's always been a part of education, has been sports and the mm-hmm. arts. And you think about it, and it's not academic or really specifically contributing to the workplace kind of lesson. And there's very few people that actually go professional in those two categories. Why do you believe sports and the arts are still a core part of what education needs to be?
Yeah, and I'm so glad you brought up the arts too, because so many times talk about sports, the fields and courts being an extension of the classroom, which is true. But the music and the arts, so much learning that's being done there too. The creative thinking and being able to solve problems kind of comes from creative thinking. I've seen that happen a lot with my own wife. So you're exactly right. I look at it as a true extension of the classrooms, and those coaches, those art teachers, they're their mentors and teachers, just like the history, the math, or the science teacher is. And sometimes they talk about partnerships. It's great if the coach is also a teacher, but it doesn't have to be. What's important is that coach is able to connect with the student, athlete, partner with the rest of the school, partner with the parent, know that individual kid, and challenge them. What really happens in the sports fields is challenging, and the repetition, the practice, the preparedness for the game, all of that stuff of practice, you're going to get better. You can stumble and fail and strike out and throw an interception. You work hard, you're going to hit a single. You're going to hit a double. You're going to throw strikes. You're going to make those free throws. The next pass is going to be a touchdown or whatever it is. Art, your first drawing is going to be terrible. And then you're going to work on it, and you're going to work on it, and you're going to see that improvement. And that's those are some of the lessons that you don't get quite as dramatically sometimes in the formal academic setting that can be beneficial. So I think sports are required, especially for some of the kids that are struggling a bit. If you can have a good coach, connect with them, it rings the bell. It kind of is a fresh start for that kid. It can be in the classroom too, and then because what kids need is it's some self-esteem, it's some confidence. Once that confidence comes and you get through the awkward stage of elementary and middle school and you're finding your identity a bit, that's when success really can come. And so you want your kids to stand tall and be confident, and that comes through being able to be on a team. But another part of being in sports is teammates. Being on a practice squad and helping the starters and learning the importance of being a teammate there and being a good follower on a coach. And then when it's your turn and the light is shining on you, your ability to step up and perform. That's wholly important. That's some things that you really don't get in your traditional classroom. Yeah. Vital.
I think there's a lot of things when it comes to sports that have helped me. Yeah. As I've gone through life, I mean, you hit it home with just the life skills. You learn how to be, you gain confidence. You learn how to work with other people. You learn how to be disciplined. You learn how to overcome mistakes, and that's okay. I think sports are a great platform where you're going to fail. You're going to miss a shot. You're going to miss a tackle. You're going to fail in some kind of way, and learning how to be okay with that and understanding that you're going to get better. I think another component is that you learn how to take care of your body. I think that's something that so many people nowadays don't know how to do. Just like even in football, you learn that you get banged up, you need to take care of your body. You learn how to push your body, and how to train your body and develop a healthy body, because you need a healthy body. And then it helps you with stress. I think it's a great way to handle stress and outlet for stress. I remember in practice, I would feel so much better coming out of practice whenever we finished that, even with all the stressful school things that were going on. I think that was a huge part of what helped me get to where I am today.
Thanks for bringing that up. Absolutely. A couple of thoughts. One, I think back to my law school years. There's a joke about 3 years of law school. The first year they scare you to death. The second year they work you to death. And the third year they bore you to death. But I remember I performed well in that first year. My grades, really strong grades. And one of the reasons is in retrospect, is I kept my exercise routine throughout the time period. I found time to get a workout in. I ate a little better. I didn't do crazy all-nighters, going to bed at 2 p.m., and I did really well. My second year, my grades went down because I was just bombarded with work, and I didn't navigate it well. And what I lost was, one, the stress, but two, just the thinking. You need your sleep, and you need to be at your sharpest. You need to be sharp, and you're sharp when your body is in a really good place. When your body is, you can spend an hour reading, and if you're fresh, that hour reading is going to be much more beneficial and advantageous than if you're tired or distracted reading. And so that's a first point. Yeah, absolutely, really important. A second part is thought is a couple years ago during March Madness, during the college basketball championships, there was an advertisement by the NCAA, and it was going from former student athlete, graduated in 2021, graduated in 2018, graduated in 2013. All of them was college student athlete, and it showed them in a CEO role or an executive vice president role or a influential coach or doing all these other things. And it was a springboard not to professional sports, like you mentioned earlier, but it was a springboard to leadership and success in this world. So I think the intangibles you gain from being a student athlete about leadership and how to lead, how to follow, that is how you find success in the marketplace, how you find success in the military, how you find success in the business world. All those skills are there. So I think the NCAA really hit on something smart there. And the third thing is back to the military. Military's struggling with recruiting, not just because people are frustrated with, the issues of the day. It's because such a significant portion of our 17 and 18-year-olds don't meet the bare requirements of physical fitness to get in the military. And the military's putting a lot of money into grabbing kids who have the desire but don't have the physical health to go send them someplace for 4 weeks, or to give them the ability to try to lose some weight and be a little healthier before they even go to basic training. But it's a struggle. So I think we all know, and it happened in previous administrations where First Lady Michelle Obama was talking about let's move. It's certainly in this administration with Secretary of Kennedy talking about Make America Healthy again. Again, not to get political, but we need to promote that, but not just as a soundbite, but what are the ways that we can help make us physically more fit? Because it's stress, like you said, but it's the people that are unhealthy are certainly costing our health system a lot more. And there's ripple effects everywhere. And we own gyms for a long time, and we now are a consulting business. My wife spearheads and leads a consulting business in the fitness industry. But the individual attention you give to our customers, our clients, what they like more than anything else, yes, they want to be fit, but that energy they get. I can now be a better dad. I can now be a better mom. I can be a better husband or wife with more energy, and that comes from being physically fit. And so it is extremely important. In the mental health piece too, we talked about that briefly. They support each other. I think the more physically fit you are and healthy you are, that certainly helps your mental health too.
Absolutely. So to wrap it up, I kind of wanted to look at a positive and look at the future. So if you could change just one thing about education tomorrow, what would it be, and what gives you hope about this next generation of students?
Yeah. What gives me hope is the hunger, the courageous hunger of our young people. I mean, looking me in the eye right now, a young person, not a day before, 24, 23, 25, whatever
Almost
you are.
24.
Almost 24, and doing wonderful things in the world. And people like you are everywhere. I mentor a young man who's now just a captain in the Army. I've mentored him for a while, and a lot of other people I do. I am so exciting about the future. That is wonderful. The hope is there. What I'd like to change is it goes a little deeper and reflective. We have people that say that they want to serve our kids. I don't know they always want to serve our kids, because if they did, they'd be open for help in other areas. I want our nation's leaders, I want the adults in our world to be the adults our kids need, not the adults that we as adults want to be. We need to forget about right versus left, and forget about union versus non-union, forget about 40 years of education versus somebody who's just lived life, and all come to the table. Homeschoolers aren't a threat to the public schools. Private schools are here to stay as well. We need to not look at it as, again, with walls up and as rivals. We as adults have to step up as leaders and serve our young people to help navigate a very difficult situation. And we talked about a few ways with innovating the stale model, but it comes from the heart, and we can't be so combative in this world we're in right now, that especially online, it's extremely combative. Education needs to be an off-limit zone for that, and it's a place where we just need to develop our kids to be successful human beings and not worry about all the other stuff that's out there. That's for adults and others to navigate and talk about. So I think we need to really embrace and hold hands as adults and step up and do a better job to serve our kids.
Well, I appreciate you giving all this wisdom away. You've been a great mentor for me, and so I really appreciate it. And it's always great to talk about these things. I think that we could talk all day about it, and there's so much more to touch on. And like you talked about, just like within teams, within communities, it's all about finding mentors. And ideally, your teacher is a mentor of sorts. They should be someone who's speaking into your life and providing personalized and practical, when you need practical education. And so I'm super excited too. I think that there's so many resources and tools and opportunities. You talked about AI being such a great resource. And I think that we're going to quickly learn that less is more when it comes to education, and figuring out how to leverage that. There's such an abundance out there. And so as we learn to work together to leverage these tools and to tear down the walls and work together, I think that there's a lot of exciting things coming in the future.
Yeah, more conversation, less debate. That's kind of a theme I like to say. Let's sit down and talk and not try to debate and try to beat somebody up and do that. But I'm excited about America. I'm excited about our future. And I'm looking in the eyes right now, one reason for that excitement. I'm excited for the future you're going to have. So keep digging, keep learning, and keep leading. And let's enter the arena and have fun.